I am an independent computer consultant by trade. I'm also a new media, podcasting, social media consultant. I refuse to call myself a guru because that just entails all sorts of nasty stuff. I also am a writer and producer of Career Opportunities. And that is a weekly career column, and for the last 5 years, a weekly audio podcast of that column. It originally was in print in San Diego for a magazine called Computer Edge. Unfortunately, it's gone out of print, but I am still doing it on the website and as a podcast.
Where do we get to?
That URL for me is that one up there. That will take you /career on the end. Takes you directly to my career podcast and book column. If you just type the first part of it, my name there, you'll get a listing of everything that I do, which includes gardening, podcasting, and writing, and all sorts of photos and all sorts of other crazy stuff.
Photos we want to see, right?
Yes,
Not
yes.
photos we don't
Not
want
well. What was I just saying to her about everything being public? That's like, no. So you can get to everything that I do through that URL. Career Compass. This is based on a column I wrote years ago. And when Career Camp LA came up, I said, that'd be a good topic to talk about. So I have had my outline. I said, I'm going to do it this time. The idea of the Career Compass comes from a variety of places. First of all, one of the things I always tell people when I'm talking about careers is you can and should be in charge of your career. Too often, and I'm sure you know people like this, we let our career happen to us. We don't manage it, we don't control it in even the slightest of ways. It is more a progression of jobs. This job, oh, that job's available, okay, I'll take that job. Oh, that job's okay, I'll take, and it's just a progression from one job to the next as availability dictates. The trouble is with that, to wake up 10, 15, 20 years later and go, where am I? How did I get here? There's an online metaphor called shaving yaks. And that's the type of productivity problem you run into where you get up in the morning, so I got to fix the faucet in the kitchen, so I need washers. So I got to go to the store to get washers for the kitchen. Well, on the way to the store, I realized I needed to help someone do that. And by the end of the day, you end up shaving a yak, and you have no idea how you got there. Okay? My goal is to not have you shaving the yak of your career. Okay? I want you to wake up in 10, 15, 20 years and go, yeah, I'm pretty close to where I wanted to be. The trouble being, of course, is we often don't have any idea where we want to be. We look at the jobs that are available. We say, oh, well, yeah, I guess I could be a salesperson. I guess I could be an engineer. I guess I could be this. But it's not something that we put our whole heart into. It's more something that we just accept. The trouble with that is, I personally believe that you can do good work at a job that you're not particularly interested in. You might even occasionally reach great work in that job, occasionally. But you're never going to do sustainable, continuous, best work ever in a job unless you have some affinity towards the job. Unless you really like what you're doing. And I'll bring up the P word, which some people disdain, but you have to have a passion for what you're doing. If you have a passion, I can almost guarantee you will have a successful career. Because it is that passion which sort of overwhelms everything else. When you meet people and you have a passion about something, they see it immediately. It's immediately apparent. There's not a question of, well, I wonder if you could do the job. I don't know, he doesn't seem that interested in it. No, if you're passionate about something, people sense that immediately. That's something that I get when I talk to people about careers and podcasting and other things. I tend to get, I'm passionate about it. My quote is, I'm passionate about it, and you should be too. Okay? And I would like you to all feel the same way. Now, this careening from job to job that sometimes happens. And sometimes we can direct our career a little bit, and sometimes it's just totally off the way. It's working against your own best interest. And the fact is we do that a lot. We often work against our own best interests. We don't maintain the car, and the car breaks down at the worst possible moment. We don't upgrade our antivirus software and we get a virus on a computer. That's just a very human thing to do. But if you think about it, and you start thinking about what is in your best interest, you'll start to realize that perhaps some of the jobs, or some of the job offers you've received, really weren't in your best interest. They were a job, and job's important, money's important, we all have to survive. But there comes a point where working against your own best interest is never a good way to go. You're gonna pay for that somewhere down the road. It may not happen for years, but you're gonna wake up someday and go, what the heck was I thinking, okay? It takes time and energy away from, the quote I use for my subtitle for my column, it takes time and energy away from building the career you deserve. And the fact is, I try to instill that in everyone I talk to. You deserve a good career. Sometimes we can get down on ourselves, and I'm a big one on that. There can be days I'm just like, oh man, this is not working out, I'm not doing this right. You can't let that become a regular thing. You do deserve a great career. And there will be people out there who tell you that you don't. For their own selfish motives. They need a worker, go ahead, question. They need a worker who's going to fill, they need a cog that's going to fill a particular spot in their business, and you just happen to be there. Every moment you spend doing a job like that is time away from doing the job that could be your passion, that could be the career you really want. So except in just very desperate cases, and sometimes we get there, I've been there myself, where you just need the money, you really need to be valuing every job, every offer you're giving, every opportunity. There's lots of people out there who come to say, it's a surefire money-making thing. You gotta really have to investigate what they're talking about, because there are a lot of ways that you can do that off the path. And the bad thing is often we don't know what we want to do. And so sometimes what I do is I help people discover what they really want to do. And that's where the career compass comes from. Okay, compass typically, shown north, west, east, south. Anyone who sails or boats or flies an aircraft will very quickly tell you that when you are in that environment, you are never on course. The currents, the air currents, the water currents, the waves are always fighting you. They're always pushing you off where you want to go. Just the nature of the beast. You're not on a road that doesn't move. You're on a fluid environment that pushes you where it will. What that means is, if you were to map out a boat's course, and you can see this in some historical maps of like Columbus's course to get to the New World, it's like this. It's back and it's forth, and it's back and it's forth. And that's exactly what your career is doing. The fact is, it is nearly impossible to track perfectly north in your career. That's just not going to happen. The world is too big of a place, and there are too many things that go on to track perfectly north. Your goal is to be tracking north, or in the direction you want to go. I use north as the example. To track in that direction as much as possible. Okay? So the first thing you do, and this is an exercise you can do now, or you can do at home later today, or when you have time. Think about everything you like to do. And that doesn't mean just as a job. Think of everything you enjoy doing. Boating, water skiing, gardening, engineering, building things, making stuff with your hands, ceramics, art of various types. What are the things you really enjoy doing? And the way you can define those most important things to you is, what things do you do where you lose track of time? Writers call it flow. They call it getting into a flow state. And it's the type of thing where you sit down to work on something, whether it's writing or music or whatever, and you kind of wake up and it's like 2 hours later, it's like, wow, how did that time just flew by? How did it do that? If you get that feeling, you're in a flow state. You are where you really want to be. You're doing something that totally encompasses your attention and really pleases you. Okay, so those are really the big things to look out for. Takes a little while. Make a goal. Basically say, I'm going to fill an entire page. That's a good goal, because you get to the first 10 or so and it's easy, and then you got to start thinking about things. And if you push yourself to a page or 2 pages, it makes you delve a little deeper. And I do want you to delve into things that you might not think of, and especially into those things you might not think are a career or a job. But the fact is, everything you do could conceivably be a job, could conceivably be a career, if you can make it work out. Okay? So now that you've got this list, the next step is you walk over to your career compass and you start plotting your course. For me, music is pretty high up here. Technology is, I'm a computer geek. It's way at the top. Okay, and that's what I've been doing basically for the last 25 years. Another thing that took me a long time to figure out is there's another overall theme to my career that I had trouble seeing. And actually we had a great talk, and in fact this talk is available on the First Camp LA site in full, and it's by a friend of mine named Joanne Brahaney. She has a website called Goosing Your Muse, goosingyourmuse.com. She talks about different career paths, and career path strategies. And she defines basically 3 to 4 types of careers. And the trouble is, I have a career which is called a spiral. The trouble with the spiral is, you can't tell what the theme of your career is until you live it for a while. Because it's only in looking back on what you've done that you sort of figure it out. Some people like Yo-Yo Ma, he's what they call a steady state. He does one thing and gets better and better and better and better and better and better. Typical corporate career, stair steps. Up, next level, next level, next level, next level. Mine is this big sweeping spiral, and my jobs are kind of dots on that spiral. And it's only when Joanne, we met when I worked at Walt Disney Imagineering, and she explained this to me, and it was like a revelation to me. She said, you have a spiral career. You won't know for a little while what your theme is. You have to live it first. Finally, about 5, 6, 7 years ago, I finally figured it out. And that is everything I do, including today, including career camps, including everything else, is about education. I am at my best when I'm helping others. So now that I know that, that's something that goes right at the very top of my compass. I know that is where I'm at my best, where I do my best work, where I feel most worthwhile, both personally and publicly. And so I got lucky. I finally figured that out. And you will figure that out too, whether you have any types of those careers. So, going along further with your career. Well, I'm sort of good with numbers and accounting. I worked in the accounting or finance department for a while, and that was okay. Maybe I was a teacher for a while. Now we're kind of talking more about you or a theoretical person here. You know what? I really hated working the assembly line. That was just terrible. Didn't enjoy that at all. Notice where the position is on something you don't like. The further something is away from north, the less you enjoy it, the less it's fulfilling to you, the less it means to you. Now, of course, what's the biggest trouble we run into? We start to draw our compass and we realize, oh heck, all the jobs I've had are like over there somewhere. We have worked against our own best interest. We've taken one job after another that's been presented to us, regardless of how we felt about it. And again, I want to restate, I'm not immune to the pressures of the world. None of us are. That doesn't mean we have to be stuck there. There will be times you'll have to take a job just because you simply need a job. But immediately your thoughts should be getting back to a better part of your compass. Pardon me. Then, much like our ship captain or our airline pilot, our direction in our career is going to waver. It's going to go from one direction to another as we move from job to job, as we move from career to career. But now you've got a goal. Now you've got a course. We call it a bearing when you're taking a compass bearing. You know your bearing is here. And what you do is you do everything you can to stay on that compass bearing. You may drift to the right, you may drift to the east, you may drift to the west, but your next thought, your constant thought should be, how can I bring it back to where I am? And most important, you've got to avoid this area. You've already figured out, does it interest you, doesn't fulfill you, might even cause you health issues, marriage issues, and a bunch of other trouble, okay? Gotta try to do your best to stand. That doesn't mean you won't go there. Sometimes you will. Sometimes because you do it by accident, you don't realize that the job you're taking is, is down here because you really didn't think about it. Sometimes because you have to. But now you have a bearing. And you can constantly asking yourself, how do I get out of this role, maybe in the same company? How can I say, well, you know what, I actually like this a little bit better. Maybe I can, lateral over to that. I'll feel a little bit better. I'll get back on course a little bit more. And so you're constantly correcting on your courses. That make sense for everybody? Does that sound logical? One of the things I have here, kind of going back to our list of things that you like, is include hobbies, include volunteer work. Volunteer work is kind of an underrated way of figuring out, especially if you're younger. Volunteer work can be a great way of trying out environments, trying out jobs, trying out careers that you think you might be interested in, but you're maybe not ready to dive in all the way. You can often find, through volunteer work, you actually get a really clear idea of how a business works, how a nonprofit works, because you're kind of in the nitty-gritty level when you're a volunteer. You're the person moving desks around and tables, and you see all the politics that is always in every company. You start to see that, and you actually get a very clear view when you're volunteering, but without a lot of the risk of, I'm committing my entire career to this. That's a great thing to do. Sometimes household tasks. Do you like decorating? Are you constantly rearranging your house? Well, I can tell you, there's now a job that allows you to do that every single day. It's called house stagers, and they're for real estate people. They go into a home that's for sale and they stage it. They make a show set. Yeah, there's a whole TV show with it. My wife tells a story all the time about the guys that she knew in high school who were in shop and in auto shop. It's like, they should have moved to LA. They could be transportation managers and play with every fancy car on the planet every single day. It'd be a perfect job for them. Perfect job for them. They didn't know it existed. Who knows that job even exists outside of LA? So that's another thing. There's often jobs out there you don't think that can't be a career. There's guys and women, actually, that drive all over this town, all over the world, taking pictures of places. They're called location managers. And when someone says, well, we need an Afghan village, or something that looks like an Afghan village, they go through their file, their desert file, say, well, out by Palm Springs, there's this place where we can shoot, and there's no power lines, and there's mountains in the background that look right, and it's a job.
But there's these funky white windmills that,
Well, if you remember Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise, Rain Man, they use those. I mean, my sister lives in Palm Springs, so I'm very familiar with that location. That's the type of thing. Well, where can, the director's going, in that case, the director probably said, oh, I was driving out in Palm Springs, and I really love the windmills, so I really want to use them. And then they go to location managers and say, where can we shoot there? Who do we talk to? How do we get approval to shoot there? That's a job. It's a job, walking around finding neat houses, neat places, neat buildings to shoot movies and television. Okay? You would be surprised the types of jobs that are out there that are based around our hobbies, our desires. Gardening is another big one. I mean, they're working in everything from working to a nursery to being a landscape designer to being a famous garden designer. Every year in England they have the Chelsea Flower Show, and I think they had 6 or 7 show gardens, multi-million-dollar show gardens this year that were just phenomenal. These people in the UK are rock stars. And not just in the gardening world. Everybody knows about these people, not just the gardeners. They are true rock stars at that level for making beautiful gardens. It is possible. There's lots of stuff out there like that. Include work you think you might want to do even if you're not doing it now. Okay? This is your chance to dream and to speculate and to think, well, gosh, I wonder what it's like to be a location manager. I wonder what it's like to be on a film set. Frankly, I'll tell you right now, film set is the most boring place in the world, just so you know. Unless you're actively involved in making the film, it's really dull. Yes. Okay. Kind of talked off my notes there, and I realized where I was up to. One of the And when you're placing things here, the big question you're asking yourself about all these things is not just, do I like it or not? I will say, in life in general, that's the biggest question you need to ask every single day about everything you do. You have to ask why. Too often, we don't ask why. As a computer consultant, I'm often faced with this. I'll get a call. I need to motivate, I need to do this and that, and then it's like, why? And what we find out is they figured out a very convoluted path of doing something they want to do. But the fact is there's a two-step process that can negate that whole process if we ask the question, why? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the end result? And it really helps to ask why. Sometimes it's not appreciated that much. Oftentimes, people who ask why a lot, especially inside of some companies, are kind of frowned upon because they can slow things down and they can, it's sort of like being the kid and the emperor walks by and he goes, the emperor has no clothes. And yeah, sometimes when you ask why, it really points out there's no there, that's another good figure of speech I like. There's no there, or the emperor has no clothes. But guess what? Everyone is better off for knowing that. Everyone. Why spin your wheels doing a huge project if you don't know why? Someone may think they know why. We're doing that to incentivize the high-scale sales practices. Like, if any time there's more than 3 words involved, they're probably wrong. Or they're probably lying. Yes, sir?
I see what you're talking about, work projects, whatever, why you want to do this, but I don't understand, what is your statement, your career compass statement that you're asking why to?
I'm sorry. Why do you like or dislike it? That's why. When you're going through the jobs, why do you like this or why do you dislike this? Because you'll actually come up with some interesting things. Sorry I wasn't clear about that. You're exactly right. Thank you very much. You say, okay, I'm here. I don't really think I like that. The next question is why? What don't you like? I don't like the people I work with. I don't like where it's at. I don't like the message that it sends. Maybe I'm sort of developing a green living instinct and I'm working for an oil company. Okay? Not a good place to put yourself right now. You're going to have some inner conflict about that. The other thing you'll find, though, sometimes that's like, why don't I like that? And you realize, well, I don't like that because of her. That's why I don't like my job. Well, that's totally different. That's a environmental effect of where you are, not the work you're doing oftentimes. And sometimes you'll run into that. You realize, well, I don't hate doing the job. I just hate doing it here. This place is a lousy place to do that job. And if I could do it somewhere else that had a better method of doing this, I actually might be happy in that job. So that's an important thing. That's why you're asking why. Is you said, I don't like it, I do like it, why? And figuring out, is it something that is endemic to the type of work? You know, I drill for oil, but I really hate that we pollute the ocean. Well, that's really hard to get around. I drill for oil and I hate the job because my boss is a jerk. That's a different thing. Now, as a corollary to that, just this is kind of off here somewhere, we often move from job to job, and that's fine. And we often have reasons for moving from job to job. The first time you move for a particular reason, okay. Second time you move for a particular reason, okay. The third time you move for a particular reason, such as all my bosses are jerks, then you need to look at yourself and go, am I bringing my troubles with me? Okay? So when you get to the third time around on something like that, you have to look deeply at yourself and say, am I carrying my baggage with me? Is that why I'm having bad experiences at the work I'm doing? Because sometimes that can have to do with the fact you just don't like the work. That may be what you discover there. That, you know, I keep moving from job to job because I'm not that thrilled with what I'm doing. So again, asking yourself lots of questions about, you know, once you figure out what you like to do, where it kind of falls in your compass, and then why it falls in the compass. Very, very important. So, once you've sort of got your compass laid out, you're out looking for a job, whether you have one right now or you don't have a job, you're out there looking for the next job. Now you have a criteria to evaluate. You have a very important criteria to evaluate. You're looking for jobs and you say, well, that job is in this industry. Well, that industry falls, you know, over here somewhere. That industry falls over here. That job is here. You immediately start to classify what type of work you're looking for by using your compass. You can concentrate your search in those areas that interest you most, and hopefully you can avoid those job offers that suddenly appear, which might look like a great thing because, hey, it's a job, but you can evaluate them in the same way. You can look at your compass and say, well, yeah, it's a job, but man, I am going due south if I take that job. I'm going exactly the opposite direction of where I want to be, the opposite direction of my desires, the opposite direction of my needs in most cases. Can you do that? Yeah, for a short period of time, you know, if it's really critical, and if you know that kind of going in, but you want to basically continue your job search and say, okay, I got this for now, but I got to find something that's back closer to home. You also then revisit this compass constantly. Because the fact is, some things you're working on will vary from day to day. You know, that compass can swing quite wildly sometimes. But it is important to notice it and to engage in it and spend some time once a month, once every 6 months. You know, put it on your calendar. Say, hey, we're gonna look over the career today. We often do that a lot in our lives. Well, I'm gonna reflect on my 5-year plan. You know, and you put it on your calendar. Most of us don't. Most of us go through life running from one thing to another that's attracting our attention. We very rarely sit down and actually think about things, and especially about a career. A career is one of those things that's so easily, you know, tossed off and said, I don't really, I don't have time for that. I got the baby's crying, the dog's sick, you know, the grass is dying. There's so many other things that get in the way. But I would challenge you to regularly revisit what you're doing and what you would like to do. Sometimes you don't discover a hobby or a particular possibility for a career until late in life. You know, maybe you didn't know you could be a location manager. Maybe someone will run out of here and want to do that job. The fact is, you may not, if you don't know the job exists, you can't be on your compass. So, kind of reevaluating what you've learned in the last several months. Yes?
I was just gonna say, and life circumstances change your what's right for you.
Yeah.
At different stages.
You've all seen my son Joe running around here. He's 12, so my next big decision point is about 6 years away. You know?
He's the guy who's running camera?
Yep, the young
What
guy.
a cool kid.
Oh, good, thanks.
He's awesome.
He really enjoys this, so it's again, he's on the north side of the compass right now. You know, he graduates from high school, goes to college in about 6 years. So, you know, that's definitely, I got a point out there on the edge of the horizon that I'm looking at, because my wife's now transitioning to being a college professor. So we're looking for a full-time professorship for her. Well, that could conceivably now be anywhere in the world, because, you know, I would like him to go through high school here in LA and, you know, finish with his friends. But beyond that, you know, 6 years goes
Maybe
Yeah.
like
he's
that.
gonna go to college.
Maybe he doesn't want to go to college. Don't say that to his mother. I think we've done a good job of brainwashing him in that regard.
Yeah,
And choice of words.
Yeah, we've been very very careful to at least make sure that that is a known possibility for him. You know, there are ways. Well, you know, I do it with my nieces and nephews back in Ohio, where my family still lives. You know, they were out for visit, and we were at the Natural History Museum. I said, you know, there's a Taco Bell and a McDonald's at the museum for lunch, right? I said, you know, why don't we walk across the street to USC? We'll go eat in the Union. Yeah, well, go over to the college for a while. And just kind of nudge, nudge, wink, wink, you know, and drag them over onto campus, just so they can at least experience what it's like. But again, you may not know exactly. Your life changes every day. You know, we don't reevaluate it every day. Probably drive us so mad if we did. But definitely, it's something you want to put on your calendar and say, you know, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What decision points are coming up? You got that 6-year decision point coming up. Theoretically, 2 years out, he could decide he wants to go to some other high school, and that's like, oh, okay, that's actually one a little bit closer. We gotta deal with. So, always something worthwhile looking at. As you go through your career, we talked about, you know, staying on course too. Sometimes, as well, you just have to make the quick cut. You just got to say, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm done. I've proven over the years that I don't like it. It doesn't work for me. And you just start to prune stuff out. As we know, our lives are totally cluttered these days. I think even someone from the 1600s saying, my life was so busy and cluttered with all these newspapers and everything. So I think every culture deals with it, every time deals with it. But we do have a lot to contend with these days. And Tom Peters, the famous business writer, described it as having a to-don't list. Way too many of us are really good at saying yes, way too much. And there are times we need to say no, we need to don't that. You know, maybe, I'm trying to think of, perhaps there's a professional association we're members of, and every time we engage with that association at a conference, we just don't enjoy it. It's just, there's politics, there's whatever, it doesn't serve our needs, whatever. It doesn't have value to us anymore. Well, instead of just continuing to do it out of habit, instead of continuing just to do certain work out of habit, kill it off. Just tell yourself, we're done. We're moving on from that. Doesn't mean you can't revisit that in the future too, but it will really help to clear up your thinking. It'll help to clear up your direction a lot, because you'll just have less stuff on your mind, less stuff cluttering up your decisions. So definitely something to concern yourself with. And as like life changes, your opinions change. As I said, sometimes you'll discover that you really didn't hate that job, you just hated the people you're working with. You know, certain companies are non-functional, okay? They're not even dysfunctional, they're non-functional. They actually go backwards. I've been at companies like that, and you sort of shake your head and go, what happened? You know, just a total train wreck. That's okay. It's okay to recognize the train wreck. And it's okay to think about it and say, what can I do to get out of this train wreck, even if I move to another company doing a similar job? Yes?
I was talking to Anthony about a career placement test that the Career Center offers. Is it pretty much like this? Would this be useful?
Did he mention like Myers-Briggs or?
He just told me to come in.
Yeah, there's a variety of testing. Myers-Briggs isn't a career test; it's a personality test. How many people take a Myers-Briggs? Okay, I hear that at least once every time I bring it up. I took it, and I just like it perhaps for a different reason. Basically, it's supposed to, there are 4 criteria, and there's a range that you move, actually 8 criteria, and there's a range you move back and forth on these 4 sets of criteria. Intuitive versus thinking, and emotional versus, whatever. My trouble with it, I took it, I went right down the middle.
Me too, right down the middle.
I'm, depending on when you catch me, what day you catch me, I can be either side.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm high on extrovert. Okay?
Yeah, we're feeling.
You asked me to go to a gathering of 1,000 people in downtown LA, I'm an introvert. I'm like, too many people. So I swing both, yeah. And so what Anthony, I don't know which particular test he's talking about, but I will say this, even if you dislike Myers-Briggs, it's worth taking it, because it makes you think. A lot of what I do in reading and career counseling and other stuff is, I read a lot of books, and most of them are utterly horrible. But almost every one of them I get at least one gem out of. And that's why you read the book. And the fact is, every one of these tests, as long as they make you think about it, just like it or not, if it makes you think, it's worth doing it. And what he may be discussing actually is something like, hopefully an improved version of what we used to do back in high school. Where they said, well, you're going to be a truck driver, and you're going to be a street sweeper, whatever. Basically, it tries to apply your likes and dislikes, natural likes and dislikes, to careers which emphasize those traits. The fact is, you can do that yourself, whether it's through a career compass, which I made up, out of whole cloth, or any other of the things. The important thing you can do is just think about it. What do you like doing? So many of us don't think that. Especially MBAs. Do you have any MBAs? No, one MBA. Unfortunately, what happens is you have to be very careful in your MBA program. You can come out and think that life is one way, that life is a spreadsheet, life is calculatable sometimes. And the fact is, no, it's all a probability. But some people come out with very hard and concrete things, and it really gives them a hard time in work. Because they think, no, this says that this is supposed to be the return rate on this, with this and this, except you got some jerk over in your distribution department who's, not shipping stuff out, and all of a sudden the whole thing blows up in your face, and you don't know why. So anything that gets you to think about things is great. You learn every bad situation, and I know this is hard to take sometimes, but every good situation, every bad situation, there is something to learn there. Because it makes you think about it. If you think about it. The trouble with a lot of this, we don't take the time to think about it. It's easier to ignore it, because sometimes you have to face some pretty tough questions. But that's life. We face tough questions in our families, in our marriages, in our work, wherever. Sometimes you just gotta, man up, and face it. And, sometimes it requires a frosty beverage to do that. I won't kid you, Sometimes it requires a frosty beverage and some good friends can often, help you with that as well.
You can go plural on the frosty beverage too.
Beverages, yeah. maybe.
Will those be provided in the main room?
Unfortunately not. You'll have to go to bar camp for that. Another type of
Bar, yeah.
At bar camp, we actually have a keg in the Saturday night. It's a 2-day event.
That's okay, we have some holistic drinks that'll help.
Pardon?
You with- We have some holistic drinks that'll help you with
There
that.
you go. I like it. Green tea. Some green tea. We've just returned from 10 days in the UK, and so we've been drinking a lot of tea lately. And it's like, we sit down and have our tea cake. That is pretty much what I have to present today. Thank you very much. Now, let us engage, as I said at the beginning of the day. Are there any questions or any thoughts, any comments? Anything you guys would like to bat around? Yes.
I did a presentation in the morning, and, I was saying that I truly believe that your life skills, they apply in so many areas of your life. What you were saying about career, it applies to relations, it applies to looking at yourself and dealing with yourself. So I would just invite, I guess, people to look at that. It's the whole, it's a well-rounded foundation of who you are, what you are, and having a real heart-to-heart with yourself about your life, and these are the results.
That goes, there's, I also talk on this on occasion too, and that's the difference between being a specialist and a generalist. I lean heavily on being a generalist. Yes, there are certain specializations. I could tell you how to remove viruses from a computer. That's a pretty specialized skill. The fact is, I pride myself on knowing a little about a lot. I'm a history, the way I describe it, I'm a geek in all things. I'm a history geek, I'm a science geek, I'm a computer geek, I'm a outdoors geek. I just embed myself in everything that interests me. Right now, I'm reading a Tom Peters book, in fact, and he just mentioned a book on the making of the Constitution, summer of 1787. And he used it as an example of the importance of just showing up, which it is. By the way, yes, life is just showing up. I mean, if you show up, you're already ahead of them. Coming here today, you're ahead of everyone you're going to meet for the next 6 months, okay? Because you showed up. You came, you engaged, you thought. A lot of people didn't. So give yourself a round of applause for that.